To his colleagues at a major commercial bank in the heart of the city, Arthur Artie Vance Cowthon Vian was a seasoned professional. Born in 1975, Arthur had spent years climbing the corporate ladder, earning the respect and, more importantly, the absolute trust of those around him. Among those who looked up to him was Victor Taylor, Vohu Tai, a fellow banker who believed he had found a mentor and a lucrative business partner in Arthur. The deception began in October 2021. Arthur approached Victor with what seemed like a can't-miss opportunity. He claimed to have a network of high-net-worth clients who needed short-term bridge loans to roll over their bank debts or to fund massive bulk purchases of fuel reserves. The promise was simple: low risk, the loans were only for a few days. High reward, Victor would receive significant interest payments on top of his principal. For nearly 2 years, the arrangement seemed legitimate. Victor saw returns, and his confidence in Arthur grew. Little did he know, he was being fattened up for the ultimate kill. Between September and October 2023, the scale of the requests skyrocketed. Arthur told Victor that a massive deal was on the table, involving fuel investments in major bank debt restructuring. Trusting his longtime colleague, Victor transferred a staggering $820,000, 20.5 billion VND, to Arthur in a series of rapid transactions. But this time, the money didn't come back. As the deadlines passed, the excuses began. The clients didn't exist. The fuel deals were a phantom. In reality, Arthur was drowning in personal debt. He wasn't investing Victor's money, he was using it to pay off his own creditors, robbing Peter to pay Paul in a desperate attempt to keep his own life from collapsing. On October 3, 2023, Victor realized the devastating truth and filed a formal complaint. By June 2024, the authorities moved in, and Arthur was stripped of his suit and tie, replaced by the cold steel of handcuffs. During the investigation, Arthur's defense was erratic. He initially confessed, but later tried to flip the script, claiming Victor had voluntarily offered the money, knowing it was for debt repayment. However, investigators found a paper trail of lies that told a different story, one of calculated fraud and exploited friendship. At January 20, 2026, Arthur Vance stood before the city court. The man who once managed millions was now fighting for his freedom. The courtroom heard two sides of a tragic financial ruin: the criminal fraud, the $820,000 stolen through the bridge loan scam; the personal debt, an additional $440,000, or 11 billion VND, that Victor had previously lent Arthur in good faith, which also vanished. In a shocking turn, while Arthur admitted to the crimes in court, new evidence emerged during testimony. The judge ruled that several new circumstances required further clarification to ensure the full scope of the scheme was understood. The case has been sent back for supplemental investigation, leaving Victor Taylor waiting for justice and Arthur Vance waiting in a cell, his reputation and career forever liquidated.
To the neighbors in the An-Ho Ward of Rockzaya City, Nathaniel Nate Shaw, Nguyen Phu Swan, and his wife, Selena Sa Tu Lai, seemed like newlyweds still in the honeymoon phase of their June 2022 marriage. But behind closed doors, a toxic mix of resentment and greed was simmering, waiting for a single spark to ignite. The night of November 7, 2022, began with a familiar pattern: heavy drinking and a bitter argument. As the alcohol clouded Nate's judgment, his eyes fell upon Selena's handbag sitting on the kitchen counter. Inside wasn't just makeup or keys, it held Selena's private security, a lifetime of savings and cash and gold. While his wife slept, Nate didn't see a partner, he saw an opportunity to wipe away his mounting debts. Nathaniel Shaw walked into that kitchen as a husband and left as a thief. He traded a lifetime of companionship for 12 years behind bars and a debt he may never be able to repay.
In the quiet commune of Ton Ben, Thomas Tom Darrow Tron von Dirk was known as the husband of Nancy Nguyen T. Neem, a hard-working local trader. While Nancy spent her days in the bustling markets to provide for their future, Tom was busy eyeing a heavy metal box in their bedroom, the family safe. On the morning of March 9th, Tom waited for the familiar sound of Nancy leaving for work. He knew that breaking into a high-security safe wasn't a silent job. To mask the sounds of his crime, he came up with a cunning, mechanical cover-up. He dragged a heavy gas-powered engine to the front of the house and cranked it to full throttle. To any neighbor passing by, it sounded like routine yard work or repairs. Under the deafening roar of the motor, Tom retreated inside with a toolkit of destruction: a hammer, a chisel, and a crowbar. With the engine screaming outside, Tom relentlessly attacked the safe. He eventually pried the lock open, revealing a fortune that didn't belong to him. Family savings, gold and jewelry. The ultimate betrayal, nearly $8,000, 200 million VND in cash that Nancy was safekeeping for her elderly mother. Total haul, assets valued at approximately 500 million VND. Tom didn't just steal from his wife, he stole his mother-in-law's life savings. Believing he had committed the perfect, noisy crime, Tom fled across provincial lines, seeking refuge in a boarding house in Kianjiang. He likely thought that by leaving his home province, he could disappear into the shadows of a new city. However, Nancy's discovery of the mangled safe led to a swift police response. Detectives from the Bin Tan district tracked his movements with surgical precision. On June 2nd, the law finally silenced Tom. In a coordinated raid between Vinglong and Kianjiang authorities, he was apprehended alongside the remaining evidence of his theft. The use of a gas engine to mask the sound of a crowbar against steel shows a level of premeditation that moves this beyond a crime of passion into a cold, calculated theft. Investigation note. In the suburban districts of Hanoi, Evelyn Harper, Nguyen T. Trang, was a familiar face in the hallways of local preschools and kindergartens. Born in 1989, Evelyn was a sharp, ambitious sales lead for a prominent commercial bank. She didn't look like a predator. She looked like a helpful financial advisor offering a hand to hardworking teachers. Between 2020 and 2023, Evelyn began visiting educational institutions. Her pitch was a classic social engineering tactic. She asked teachers to open credit cards or personal loans, claiming it was simply to help her meet her monthly sales quotas. To those who were hesitant, Evelyn offered a seductive safety net. Just open the card to help me get my numbers. If you don't need it, give it to me, and I'll handle the cancellation process for you. It was a lie designed to exploit the tech shyness of her victims. Evelyn targeted victims who were unfamiliar with mobile banking apps and digital security. Once a teacher agreed to open an account, the betrayal followed a dark, repetitive pattern. Gaining access, she would convince the victims to hand over their physical credit cards and, crucially, their passwords. The hidden loans. Instead of canceling the cards as promised, Evelyn used their personal data to log into banking apps. She didn't just spend their credit limits, she opened new online loans in their names without them ever knowing. The shell game. To stay under the radar, Evelyn used a portion of the stolen money to pay off the minimum balances on the cards. This Ponzi-style tactic kept the accounts active and prevented the banks from sending out delinquency alerts, allowing her to keep draining funds for years. The scale of Evelyn's deception was devastating for the local community. Case 1. The Single Mother's Burden. A teacher named Sarah, Miss H, needed a small $650 loan. Evelyn helped her get the card, but then secretly opened a secondary loan for $1,500 in Sarah's name, pocketing the cash and leaving Sarah with a debt she couldn't explain. Case 2. The $4,000 theft. Another victim, Victoria, Miss V, asked Evelyn to help her withdraw cash from her new credit card. Evelyn took the card, the PIN, and every cent of the $4,000, 100 million VND limit, vanishing into her own web of personal spending. By the time the authorities caught up with her, Evelyn had defrauded 13 individuals of over $36,000, 906 million VND, a fortune in a region where teacher salaries are modest. Evelyn Harper stood before the Hanoi People's Court, no longer the polished banking executive. The investigation revealed that she had spent the bulk of the money on a lifestyle she couldn't afford and on rolling over the very debts she had created to hide her tracks. The court was unmoved by her excuses. Because she used high-tech telecommunications and electronic means to commit her crimes, the sentencing was severe. The sentence: 13 years in prison. The charge: using computer networks and electronic means to appropriate property. Evelyn's career ended in a cell, leaving behind a trail of teachers who learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes, the person helping you fill out the paperwork is the one planning to steal your future. In the serene atmosphere of central Vietnam, Leo Hades Vance, Le Viet Ha, a 29-year-old from the outskirts of the city, was harboring a dark obsession. He was convinced that a younger acquaintance, 24-year-old Dylan, VTD, had been spreading rumors and trash-talking his reputation. In Leo's mind, a verbal insult required a blood-stained response. Leo didn't snap in a moment of passion, he planned. On January 13, 2026, he traveled to the Hu Troc Bridge area to purchase a rua, a heavy, curved brush hook machete, approximately 70 centimeters long. This wasn't a tool for gardening, it was a weapon of war. For 3 days, he kept the blade hidden, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The trap was set for high noon on January 16th. Using the guise of clearing the air, Leo invited Dylan and another friend to meet at the HC Coffee Shop, a popular spot located at number 5 Le Loi Street. It was a beautiful day, and the cafe was packed with locals and tourists enjoying the view of the Perfume River. Dylan arrived, likely expecting a conversation or perhaps an apology. Instead, he walked into a slaughter zone. As soon as Dylan sat down, Leo didn't say a word. He reached into his oversized black jacket and pulled out the 70-centimeter machete. Before the victims or the patrons could react, Leo unleashed a frenzied attack, hacking at Dylan's shoulders, hips, arms, and legs. The peaceful afternoon was shattered by screams. Panic erupted as dozens of customers fled the shop, running toward the riverbank to escape the man with the blade. Despite his horrific wounds, Dylan managed to scramble out of the shop. The third friend at the table stepped in, risking his own life to intervene and stop the killing blow. Seeing the chaos and the crowd gathering, Leo tucked the bloody weapon back into his coat and disappeared into the city streets. The Hughes City Police and Criminal Investigation Division launched an immediate manhunt. Within hours, Leo was tracked down and apprehended. Officers recovered the machete, still stained with the evidence of his rage. Today, while Dylan fights for his recovery in a local hospital, Leo Hades Vance sits in an interrogation room. His life of freedom over. The choice of a crowded public space for such a violent act suggests the suspect wanted the humiliation of the victim to be as public as the alleged rumors. Criminal profiling observation. Evidence log. Weapon: 70-centimeter heavy-duty machete, Rua. Location: HC Coffee Shop, high-traffic tourist area. Motive: perceived bad-mouthing, personal conflict. Status: suspect in custody, victim in stable but serious condition. In the quiet village of Bin Mai, the air was often thick with tension between two neighboring households. At the center of the conflict was Philip Pham van Phuc, a 57-year-old local, and his much younger neighbor, 30-year-old Marcus Chun Kong Min. For years, they had bickered over a land boundary, a thin line of earth that neither was willing to concede. The simmering feud finally boiled over on the night of March 7, 2025. Marcus, fueled by frustration, began shouting insults toward Phil's home, accusing the older man's family of encroaching on his land. The verbal abuse grew increasingly vulgar, echoing through the neighborhood. Phil, unable to ignore the insults any longer, stepped outside to confront Marcus. The argument quickly escalated into a heated shouting match on the edge of National Highway 91. In the heat of the moment, Marcus dared Phil to a physical fight. Consumed by rage, Phil retreated into his home, but not to cool off. He grabbed a heavy iron bar and marched back out. Marcus was ready, armed with a pair of sharp scissors. The two neighbors clashed on the dark roadside. Marcus lunged first, stabbing Phil in the right arm, causing a minor wound. But Phil's retaliation was swift and devastating. He swung the iron bar with full force, striking Marcus squarely in the head. The younger man collapsed instantly, falling unconscious onto the pavement. The aftermath. Witnesses rushed Marcus to the hospital, where doctors fought for 3 days to save him. On March 10, 2025, Marcus was pronounced dead from severe cranial trauma. Realizing the gravity of what he had done, Phil Potter didn't wait for the police to find him. He walked into the Bin Mai police station and surrendered, confessing to the strike that ended his neighbor's life. The final verdict, January 20, 2026. Phil Potter appeared in the Anjiang People's Court today, a man broken by the consequences of a single moment of fury. The court acknowledged the history of the land dispute and the fact that Marcus had struck first with the scissors. However, the use of a lethal iron bar against the head was deemed a disproportionate and murderous response. The court's decision: charge, murder. Sentence: 16 years in prison. 2 families have been destroyed over a property line. One man is in a grave, and the other will likely spend the rest of his life behind bars.